Let's continue on with our question B part 2. Using a diagram, explain how this fall in the value of Japanese yen might affect goods and services in Japan, prices of goods and services. So now in B part 2 is quite interesting because the fall in the value of Japanese yen is now the cost. And there is a different outcome that we want to focus on, the price of goods and services in Japan, and that's the effect. Okay, and we say using a diagram. So every time the question explicitly states this, we will give you a mark for it. How many marks? Of course, it depends, but in the context where you see 3 marks, likely is it will be 1 mark for a diagram, 2 marks for the explanation. Okay. Now, when you see a question like B part 2, a very important question is, what's the difference between B part 2 and B part 1? Because B part 1 is using the demand supply diagram, what framework are we going to use in B part 2? Actually, it is the ADAS framework. I'm not sure how many of you could see this. And the ADAS framework has very similar to the demand supply framework, has 3 components. The first is the component of AD or AS. Then we have the interaction after AD and AS changes. How do they interact? And third is the effects. And this is where the key difference is GPL and your real national income. Take note of this variable GPL. It is not the same as price. So GPL is the general price level of all goods and services. Okay, and it is calculated using the CPI for a basket of goods and services. And why am I telling you all this again? You've already learned this under inflation, under price stability, but I want to remind you that the macro concept is general price level, because you are looking at macro, all goods and services in the economy. But micro, you're looking at price of a particular market or good. So in question B part 1, you are looking at the market for yen. So it is the price of yen. Exchange rates is the price of yen. In B part 2, the question did not specify any market, did not specify any good, but says of all goods and services. So that is really general price levels. And when you're talking about general price levels, you're using macro analysis, so it must be the ADAS, not the demand and supply. So this is an example of how a single question can utilize different topics, and one topic is for macro, another topic is for micro. Don't be intimidated. For every question, you ask yourself, which topic is this question from? Once you have that, you can then have the framework, and in this case, the ADAS framework, and that will guide you to answer the question. So when you have this framework, what is the issue given? The issue is the yen fall in the value. So you need to ask, does the fall in the value of yen affect the AD and or the AS? And how? And why? Okay, this is a crucial focus of the question. And once you can tell me if it's AD increase or decrease, if it's AS increase or decrease, you can then go on to the interaction, and then the interaction will lead you to the effects. And the effects, you focus on general price levels, not so much on the real national income, right? How does the fall in the value of yen affect the AD and or the AS? Which do you think it is? I hope you've already done your answers, so I'm not going to pause and let you have time to discuss. I'm just going to go through it. It is possible that it could be the AD. If there is a fall in the value of yen, which is the depreciation of yen, what's going to happen? It means that the Japanese exports are cheaper in terms of foreign currency. This might cause the foreign trading partners to switch to consume Japanese exports, and when this happens, the quantity demanded for Japanese exports increases, increasing the export revenue, and the export revenue increases the AD. Of course, you assume no other changes. This line of logic could unfold. And actually, if you were to think about it, the fall in yen could also affect the AS, in particular SRAS. Why? Because when there's a fall in the currency, the depreciation of the Japanese yen, imports in Japan are more expensive in terms of Japanese yen. This increases the costs of production. There are two aspects for this cost of production. If you import the final goods and services, then this directly means that the price of the final goods and services are more expensive. But if you import factors of production or raw materials, then this would increase the cost of producing goods in Japan, goods and services in Japan as well. And then this will increase the general price levels in Japan. So this is seen through a SRAS shift up or shift left. This is also a very possible series of events that could have unfolded due to this issue of Japanese yen depreciating. And your job is to establish how AD and or AS will change and explain why. So the why is the sequential logical links that I've written out for you. And once you have done that, you can actually go ahead and show how this will lead to general price levels increasing. Even if you do AD or AS, it doesn't matter, both will have this unambiguous outcome or effect on GPL. It is not always the case. Sometimes the AD and AS may be opposing each other in terms of the GPL. AD may shift such that GPL increase, AS may shift such that GPL fall. Then you have to weigh the extent whether AD or AS shifts to a greater degree. But for this particular example, they reinforce each other. The mark distribution, take note, is 3 marks. So 1 mark goes to the diagram because they explicitly asked for it. And 2 marks goes to the explanation. The explanation you must do the issue to the AD or the AS, which is the component of the ADAS model, and then the interaction and how that leads to the effect, which is your GPL increasing. And this together will form one mark. I will not write out the answer again in detail, especially for the interaction part, because I think at this juncture you should already have the strong enough theory to answer this on your own. Okay.